Hello, it's Mrs. Wallace. I'm just going to go over the rubric. I'm using the IB rubric for paper 3 for this upcoming essay, just so we can get used to the rubric. And I'm just going to comment on some of the categories that you'll be assessed on. You can see the highest, and I'm just going to change the point value. So I'll do that so that way our rubric is going up to 0.25. So to kind of score a 25, what would be things that you would need to do? The very first area of the rubric is demands of the question. In this case, some of that thinking work is already done because we know in advance it's going to be a to what extent question. Normally on the IB exam, you might have a variety of different questions to examine something, compare and contrast something, whichever. And because the question also includes wording such as primary cause or wording such as, the date range or something like that, you want to ensure that your answer fits the demands of the question. One thing I'll remind you of is that in the questions on Friday, you are going to want to pay attention to whether the question asks you to use examples from the independence movements of the Americas. In some cases, it'll specify using more than one independence movement. Like the question could actually specify use two independence movements. You could also have a question that asks you to consider Haiti, Mexican independence movement, and or South American independence movements, in which case you have a little bit more flexibility. You might choose to answer a question that specifically addresses the Haitian Revolution, and then your entire essay would be focused on that, your thesis, your paragraph points, and so on. Whatever your answer to the question is, you would just make it clear that you were talking about the Haitian Revolution. If you're, selecting a question that's asking you for two revolutions, then you just want to ensure that, your thesis includes that and considers that and so on. So, you're looking at from the get-go, essentially fitting the scope of the question. The second area of points goes for structure. There is a doc on Schoology under the assignment that just gives you the basic structure of what this essay might look like, as well as a sample. Keep in mind the sample, is of a student who is at the end of their coursework, taking the IB exam. So, we're just starting out ours. So, you have some time to learn some of this, but the idea is that you're doing a 5 to 6 paragraph essay with an intro and a conclusion, and you want to make sure that you have some good solid paragraph development, especially for your body paragraphs. Your intro, the task is to bring up some context and introduce your thesis. You want your thesis to be clear, and then you want some paragraph points that relate to your thesis, either supporting your thesis, maybe you have 2 or 3 paragraph points that support your thesis in different ways, or using different, independence movements or something like that. You might also have a conclusion, which basically kind of, reinforces your thesis statement and, enables you to talk about the significance of your thesis statement. You want to make sure it's balanced. So in addition to supporting your thesis, you might also have a paragraph that in some cases counteracts your thesis, or you might offer, some type of, because it's a to what extent question, you're looking to ensure your reader that you have considered the various evidence, and, you're looking to ensure a well-structured essay with good paragraph development that shows some degree of balance within your paragraph structure. The knowledge is really a key thing on the IB exam. And as you can see from class, some of the topics are really challenging because they're changing and there's a lot of detail in them. This is an accuracy score, as well as ensuring that you have appropriate and relevant examples. So, you're looking to support a paragraph point. Maybe you're talking about the political grievances that were faced by upper classes in the Haitian Revolution, maybe Creoles, for example, and you might be talking about the ways that maybe, free people of color in the Haitian Revolution and Creoles in the War for Independence in Mexico. And, you're looking at bringing up some specific examples to support that analysis. So you want to introduce key content using dates, using the names of people. This is the space to try to avoid general language. So they did that to them, kind of language. You want to always plug in, which specific group are you talking about. If you're describing an action of, say, Napoleon's regime in France, note which one, what you're referring to. So this is one where knowledge is detailed, it's relevant, it's also accurate. Context and concepts. I think, when you're talking about concepts and you're talking about context, this is a way to showcase some of your historical knowledge that's outside of the historical evidence that you're actually using, but it helps you analyze your historical evidence. So perhaps you're describing the way that indigenous people get involved and indigenous people and mestizos get involved in, say, Miguel Hidalgo's giant movement in the beginning of the Mexican War for Independence. So the Cry of Dolores happens, and many people in the community start to join up, and it's many people in what we would say would be the, kind of bottom rungs of society according to the social hierarchy. If you were using evidence and talking about Father Hidalgo's movement and the various groups of people that followed him, this would be a good time to also add some context about the plight of the indigenous people, the ways in which some of the, history kind of had evolved for this particular group. So you can add some meaning to the following. Not only is there perhaps some, description of a famine that's going on. You can even add to that with some historical context of what had happened with this particular group. Might be a few sentences of context, but it's adding to the way that you understand the decision making that a particular group of people might make in a particular event. So it's not enough to just say, well, Father Hidalgo and the many Costas and indigenous peoples who followed him. You want to put some of that into context to explain that you understand why that's really significant and why that particular group might do that. So you're exploring some more content. The other thing with concepts, so you might talk about a concept like slavery. You might talk about a concept like the juntas. You might mention something, you want to use any of that language that seems to be like discipline specific or topic specific in ways that apply to the particular examples that you're using. So, you're matching your use of concepts and terms and things, with what you're talking about. Okay, it's not just like name dropping topics, you're talking about it in the context of the examples that you're using. You also want to have clear and coherent arguments and critical analysis. I think the first place that the readers will look, and I will look, is in your thesis. So as you craft your thesis statement, make sure it's a reflection of kind of that back and forth analysis. To what extent? Well, you don't want to answer like, well, to a great extent. You want to kind of think, if it's to a great extent, why is that the case? If it's not to a great extent, why is that the case? Or is there some more like nuanced way that you want to answer this question. It's, it's political grievance in this situation, but not this situation. Somehow you're distinguishing, and that is your analytical thinking, the way you develop your thesis statement, and the heading paragraph points speaks a lot about your analysis, as well as the way you develop your examples and how you use your examples to make certain points. And then you also have this last piece about multiple perspectives. One way to ensure that you get a multiple perspective is introducing that counter argument. So you might, offer, so some, historians argue this, but on the other hand, other historians might say, there's an economic factor at play rather than just political grievances or something like that. That's one way to get perspectives across. Another way to get perspectives across might be the idea of looking at maybe multiple groups of people, maybe looking at experience for indigenous people versus Creoles, looking at enslaved people in the north in Haiti versus some of what kind of political power play there is also in the central and southern parts of Haiti. So you might kind of address this difference in perspective, okay? You could talk about difference in perspective in relation to France and the way that, the French Revolution government starts to talk about the understanding of free people of color and what their rights should be. Some of that exists in France for people of color in France, and then some of that is also about the colonists. And so there's a variety of ways you can get different perspectives into your answer. Okay, be well. I hope that helps.